Okay. So once more, welcome everyone. For those of you that we have not met before, my name is Gabriel Gihana. I'm currently actually the president of AfriSnet that was appointed recently. I'm very excited to see all of you here, particularly also very pleased to host Joshua Raji today, who is going to give a presentation about the PhD candidacy exam. We will try and keep it a discussion between the two of us, and at some point we'll also open and let other people chime in if necessary. I will first introduce Josh, and then we will give him the floor to give the presentation. So Josh has a PhD from Florida International University, where he worked with Matthew DeGennaro, and he was studying the genetics of olfactory and visually guided behaviors in mosquitoes. Before his PhD, he also has a master's from the University of Lagos in Nigeria, where he studied the effects of the artemisinin, and as the thing that's an anti-malaria drug, on mitosis and genetic stability. And currently he is with Chris Potter at Johns Hopkins University as a postdoctoral fellow. So he's in HHMI, Howard Hughes Medical Institute, Hannah Gray, a postdoctoral fellow. That's probably one of the best, if not the most prestigious postdoctoral fellowship in the country. A very outstanding researcher who has also demonstrated keen interest in mentoring younger generations of researchers. I should also mention that in addition to his research, Josh has recently gracefully accepted to serve as a senior advisor on the AfriSnet graduate community. So he's one other person that you all in the AGC can reach out to if you have questions, if you need advice on anything research, anything PhD. Josh will be there and happy to help. So Josh, without any further ado, I would like you to try to share your screen, and let's see that if you have permission to do that first in the meeting, and then you can get started. Great.
All right. Thank you, Gabriel, for the wonderful introduction. And it's a great honor to be among you guys this morning. And thanks to those who have already joined us, and thankful to those who will join us soon. And today we are talking about PhD candidacy exams. And the goal is just to dissect the information. What does it mean? Who takes candidacy exams? And is this the last exams you take in your graduate program? When do you take this? Should you start worrying about this candidacy exam when you haven't even gotten a PhD position? These are some of the things we need to understand. And many of us are familiar with the word, some of us haven't heard before. And by the end of this conversation this morning, everyone should be able to understand what this means and what it entails and how can you pass this exam and why you shouldn't even worry too much about it. So I advance my slide and okay. Why candidacy exams? This is the first question I'm asking. Why do you think the education system impose this exam on all PhD students? You know, sometimes some people call it candidacy exams, some people call it qualifying exams. So my question now is, why do we have to take these exams? Does anyone wants to chime in? Maybe anyone who has done it before, or anyone who hasn't done it, or you probably have an impression about what candidacy exam is. Why do you think we take candidacy exam? Feel free to raise your hand if that's possible. Why do we take candidacy exams? Are participants able to raise their hand? Is that possible? I can't hear you, Gabriel.
Yes, they should be able to.
Okay, I called
Yes.
Isaiah.
Also, Nutifafa has also.
All right, Isaiah, can you go first? Why do you think we take candidacy exam?
Yes. So in my view, I feel like candidacy exam is basically help, like, is a means of maybe justifying, like, because you are going into a journey of unknown, so whatever that you want to do or any things that you want to do in your journey, they want to make sure that maybe at the intellectual level you actually understand what you are going to do, right? Why you want to do this project, what approach are you going to use and stuff. So basically helping you to it's not like kind of pinning you, but just to make sure that you understand all the intellectual processes along the way and you have a clear plan of executing that goal.
Thank you, Isaiah. Well said. I give Nutifafa the floor too. Please go ahead, share your ideas about, yeah.
Yeah, I think I would agree with Isaiah. So basically what I was going to say is a candidacy exams is just a way for you to propose your dissertation proposal to your committee and try to tell them why you are deciding to go into this project, the methodology that you are intending to take to answer certain research questions that are going to be involved in your project. So it's just similar to what Isaiah said. It's a way to kind of show how abreast you are with your project, the in-depth knowledge you have about your project, and why you want to go in to solve that particular problem.
Thank you, Nutifafa, for that wonderful contribution. I will just summarize what we've said. The main purpose of candidacy exam is to demonstrate your preparedness. Like, how ready are you for PhD level research? And I noticed something in the response that both of us just gave that I would like to separate from candidacy exam. Some of us responded and started leaning towards project proposal. I don't know how this works from one university to the other, but back where I did my PhD exams, candidacy exam is different from project proposal defense. So this proposal defense is, you have your project now, whether you want to work on this particular system, and then you pitch it to your committee that this is what I'm doing, this is how I'm going to do it, this is my methodology, I have the skill, this is my preliminary data. We call that project proposal. So this name might vary from one university to the other, but the candidacy exam, as written here, is to tell your preparedness, which we both mentioned for those who contributed, to test how ready you are for the exam. So these ones can go beyond your research in itself. It can stem towards your classes that you've taken. It could be your courses. It could even be some of the topics that your committee members feel that will be necessary for you to know. So they will give you those topics, those materials to go and read. So candidacy exam is more broad, beyond your project proposal, beyond what you've studied. So are we all on the same page? Yes or no?
Hey, yeah, Josh, I want to add that, in fact, in some programs, students are not allowed to do this exam on their own research, right? You're given a topic that you're not an expert in, and you're asked to sort of prepare both a written report and then give a defense of your report in an oral presentation. So it takes on multiple formats at different universities in different graduate programs. But what I've seen overall is that the whole point is exactly what you are raising here. The goal is to see if you are able to carry on a PhD level research project, if you can think critically and communicate your ideas clearly, and if you have also an in-depth understanding, of a given research area. And of course, if you have to write a report, this exam is also testing your scientific writing skills. That's what I would say for now.
Yeah, thanks for the wonderful addition. I remember during my time too, they as well tested my writing skills too. So we'll get into details of that later on, but I'm glad we are all on the same page about what this is all about, because some people have misconception. As Isaiah said, that maybe they set this candidacy exam to pin you down. Some people have that mentality, like, they don't just want you to move forward. Someone defined PhD, we call PhD Doctor of Philosophy. Someone called the acronym that pull him down, that is what PhD means, that every step you get across as you move in from one step to the other in your PhD, they want to pull you down because they don't want you to get it. Please, let's change that mentality. For the most part, your supervisor wants the best. It's their joy in the hand when you have the PhD. It's not like they just want to pull you down and waste your time. All right. So moving on, the format of this exam. What's the format? Maybe anyone who has done candidacy exam can chime in here too. What's the format? Maybe in your school, how does it work? Is it that is it oral? Do you have to write something? Is this, I don't know, is this in form of a quiz kind of a thing? Feel free to chime in. Anyone, raise your hand.
Yeah, and I want to say, once you raise your hand and you have permission to speak, you can, I think Batula had raised her hand. I don't know if she put it back down. Batula, where are you? Once you have permission to speak, you can unmute yourself and speak. You keep that permission. Okay, so Batula, you should be able to speak now.
Yeah, Batula, go ahead, please. You're muted.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, now can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I haven't really done the PhD candidacy exam yet. I have mine hopefully sometime this year. But so the format that we have here in Dartmouth is that you have to do a written proposal, an F31 style grant proposal. And then after that, you do have to give an oral presentation, which is a 15 minutes presentation of 10 slides. And you basically have to put down your aims, your hypotheses, and methods, and things like alternative strategies and interpretation of your proposal. And then they have like questionnaire sessions after that, and then they're able to like now assess how your presentation in addition to your written proposal was, and then they can say whether you passed or failed the exam. What else? I don't remember much of anything. That's like the format that they gave us, that we have to do it that way, but we haven't done it yet, so we're just on the written proposal part.
That's interesting. What an interesting stuff going on in Dartmouth.
Yeah, like that's 10
so
slides in 15
intense.
minutes. Yeah, let's have maybe Peter and then Notifafa.
Peter, please go ahead.
Yeah, so my name is Peter. I'm a second year PhD student at UPenn. So the format is also kind of the same also with what she just said. We are expected to write a proposal, and then there will be a 3 professor on the committee for the prelim that will be assigned based on your research interest. And then you will give also a 15-minute presentation, but there's no restriction to the number of slides that you can, you're expected to present. So there will be 15-minute presentation and 2 hours of questioning. And they will ask you on what you're proposing. And also some classes that you've taken that are related to your research. They will question you about all these things. They want to test your general knowledge of biology. How do you really know? If you really do know what you're talking about, your knowledge of the field, yeah, they will drill you a lot for 2 hours. Sometimes it's go over 2 hours. Yeah, and then at the end of the day, they will decide whether you've passed or not, if you can proceed to become a PhD candidate. Yeah.
Ah, interesting. So Peter, have you done your candidacy exam yet?
Yeah, I'm having it next month.
Oh, wow. Perfect.
Yeah.
I guess you're nervous. All right. But you're gonna be fine. You're gonna be fine. The way you just
You
described
do
it,
well, Peter. You
sounds
do
as if
well.
you're nervous already. You're gonna be fine, my brother.
Thank
Do we have any other person who
I
is
think Nutifafa, and then we have Samuel as well.
Hi, so I haven't yet taken my candidacy exams. I'm here to take it this year, but the format is just like, it's very similar to Peter's format, or almost the same. So you have to write your proposal and then give a 50 minutes presentation. And after that, though, you have an hour and a half for questions. And they can even ask you certain questions that are a little bit outside your project that has a link. So you need to be someone who can think outside the box and try to link your project to other stuff. So that's basically the format for my school.
Thank you, Nutifafa. Oh, well, let's move on from this part. From all the answers we have provided, something is common, oral part of it, where you're gonna be interviewed, like they ask you question verbally and then you respond. And there's also a written part of it. In my experience, the format in my school, we have this option, although it varies from one department to another too, whereby you can have an open book exam. This one, it sounds so interesting, but then by the time you start to do it, you understand that it's not that fun. So what this open book means, they give you questions and then they ask you to go and open textbook, write it, and then return it within certain hours. You are not under any supervision. So the open book sounds interesting, but by the time you start the work, it's more like writing an article, summarizing an article, and like try to research something from like 10 different articles at the same time. So that option exists, and some supervisor might say, this is my format. And then after the written, then you have the oral. So some could be closed book, whereby you are locked in a room. I don't know if some of your institution does any of this, where you are locked in a room, or like you stay in an office whereby you are not expected to open your computer. You just have to write the answers from your brain. So those are other options. So consistent with all what we've contributed so far, there is a written component to this, and there's also a verbal component to this. Gabriel, you'd like to say something regarding the format?
The format is gonna vary, right? It's almost it's almost hard to, there's no one format that every school picks, right? But I think the main point is that in most cases, there's a written component and then an oral component. In most cases, the length and the rules that go with each component are going to vary from program to program, right? And Josh, you probably get into that, but the key here is for everyone to understand the strategies, right, to get ready for these parts, for the oral part, for the written part, right? So for these people who have to give 15-minute presentations, right? What are the best ways to prepare and deliver such a presentation, right? And what are the do's and don'ts on these written parts, right? We can get deeper into that as we go forward. But that's what I would say about the format. It's just there seems to be no one uniform format, but the part on the written and the oral components at least seem common in most programs.
Oh yeah, that's true. So moving on, we will now talk about our preparation, like what do we need to prepare, to get ready for this candidacy exam. And there are so many things, because this exam varies from like the specificity, what it's been addressed, varies from one institution to another, varies from one department to another, but there is a general thing that we all have to consider. I want you to see candidacy exams as just one of those exams. Many of us here, you're already a PhD student, or maybe at least you must have written an exam in your life. If you have written GRE and you passed, and you've written any of these standardized exams in the past, TOEFL or higher tiers, and you passed, candidacy exam is also an exam to test you. So there is this general success hint. When you are ready, when you are well prepared, you're definitely going to be successful. And that leads me to the 6 P's. I call it 6 P's because they are like acronyms. They are acronyms that reflect prior proper preparation prevents poor performance. Probably we have heard of this before, but that is the truth. If you are well prepared, you won't end up performing poorly. So the preparedness is what we are hitting on here. What do you really need to prepare for? There are certain things, apart from studying, getting ready, there are certain things we also need to know. I always encourage that it's best to meet with your committee member, at least one-on-one. For example, they would give you study materials, to go and read up, especially in preparing before your oral exams, because sometimes you need to approach them and collect materials. I encourage, some of them would not even tell you, they would just tell you, I'm going to quiz you, or ask you a question on this aspect. Go and read this particular field, and then when is your qualifying exam date or candidacy exam date, I will ask you a question on that. It's not a bad idea to go and approach them and ask them for materials. Most of the time, they will be happy to give you. So
yeah, Josh, sorry to interject
yes.
here, because I think this is perhaps the most important point on this exam. You you mentioned earlier that PhD does not mean pull him down. So it's important to understand here also that your committee, in some cases, by the way, the university is going to form an entirely different committee for your candidacy exam that is different from your traditional thesis committee. So that also happens sometimes. In either case, you get to know who is on your exam committee ahead of time. Whether it's your thesis committee or a newly formed committee, it's very important to understand that their goal is not to pull you down. Their goal is to test, but also make sure that you are prepared for your PhD research. They recruited you to their program because they thought you were qualified to begin with. And their intention is for you to succeed, not for you to fail. And so what I really want to emphasize what Josh is saying here, to meet with them ahead of time if possible, and already have this mindset that you are all on the same team, if you will. They're not your enemies that are going to make you suffer through this exam. They are there to make sure that you are prepared. And if you need advice on how to best prepare, there is absolutely no reason why you shouldn't speak with them ahead of time. I highly encourage that as well. Do it, Olido.
Thank you for emphasizing that point. it can actually never be overemphasized. You need to be on the same page with them. And that leads me to this next point here, that you have to ensure that your supervisor approves of your plan to take the exam, because sometimes your supervisor might feel you are not ready to take the exam. And believe me, when they say you are not ready, most of the time, it's likely you are not ready. Although some institution stipulates that you must have completed certain number of credits, or maybe you're in your second year before you can take your qualifying exams. This vary from one institution to the other. But let's say you want to take it this semester, and your supervisor says, no, take it next semester because of this, and maybe it has its own reason. I will always advise that both of you find a meeting ground. Don't just say, oh, no, well, it's my life. I want to take it now. I want to take it now. And then you push yourself into it, and then guess what? If they are not backing you up, you're probably not going to like the experience. So ensure that they actually approve. And the way to approach this is to discuss with them ahead of time. Some of them may not really, maybe, for example, I called myself a guinea pig specimen for my supervisor because I was his first PhD student. And everyone has already done qualifying exam. And I went to meet him. I was like, I want to do my candidacy exam. And he says, wait, are you supposed to do it when I've gone 2 semesters past when I'm supposed to do my qualifying exam? And he was like, are you supposed to do it now? And he was even confusing the whole thing with the candidacy. Sometimes they may not know. It was confusing the whole thing with final defense, which is completely a different thing. So sometimes they may not know. And it is also your responsibility to know the classes you're supposed to take, because some classes have to be completed. Like they are, we have audited courses, we have some that are compulsory, like you have to take it. Those ones have to be completed before taking, going for candidacy exams. So just make sure you understand how this works, how it works in your department. Talk to people. So especially if, don't rely 100% on your supervisor, because for the most part, maybe you're not the only grad student. Don't wait for him to tell you when are you taking your candidacy exam. Be on top of your game. I appreciate those who already spoken, for example, Peter and Nutifafa or Batula, that probably will take it at some point. They already know it's their responsibility to take it, but as a grad student, you don't always lean on your supervisor to drive you. Sometimes you have to propose what your interest is, and then they would be the one to support you in the process, but make sure they approve of it. And if there is conflict of interest at this point, perhaps you feel you have all the rights to take it, and something appears as if well, we've all said they don't mean bad intent towards you, but if you are suspecting that something is not really clear, then you might have to start involving a third party. This varies from department to another. It could be the graduate program director. I'll let Gabriel chime in here. Do you think this could be a possibility that for some reason a PhD supervisor would not allow the student to take candidacy exam?
I mean, like I said, I don't think they would say, no, you're not going to take it if it's required, but they may, as I think I agree with you on the point you made, that they may ask you to wait a little bit. If the program rules allow you some time, right? I mean, if you're hitting the deadline, then you have to take it no matter what. But what you're alluding to is also something very important that also underscores your success on the candidacy exam. It's your relationship with your PI. It's very important that you establish a good relationship with your PI for this candidacy exam and beyond. My understanding is that your supervisor is probably your best advocate on this test. Even though in most cases they are not part of the committee that is testing you, I don't think any decision can be made without their consultation. So it's highly, highly important that you speak with them. And what Josh is saying here is that your supervisor is not ignorant. Of course, they understand the rules of when and how you will take this exam, but they can be very busy sometimes, and they are always often quite busy. So it's important that you remind them and do so ahead of time. So give them plenty of time. And the more time you give them, the better they will help you prepare. And I also want you to understand that there's an intention behind keeping them out of the committee that tests you. It's not so that they don't answer questions for you, just for that. But when they are separate from the exercise, they then become somebody you can also rely on, which means they can proofread your documents. No, I don't think in most cases they can't read your written reports, but they can help you. For example, they can assess your methods that you're going to propose, right? You can talk to them about the exam. You can talk to them about the folks who are on your committee, right? So this is very important as well, that you're in good terms with your direct PhD advisor.
Yes, thank you. Moving on, I always like to emphasize this. You have to be mentally ready, emotionally ready. If you are not mentally and emotionally ready, postpone it. You might wonder, like, why is emotion coming into this? Why is mental state coming into this? Because the exam process is a drilling process. It's not this type of exam you just wake up and under 10 minutes you're done. The format varies from one institution to the other, as been mentioned here. You see the rigor. I mean, having to stand on the spot and being questioned for 2 hours, and you are not mentally ready or emotionally you're imbalanced at that point, or before then, even if you have mastery of what you're supposed to say, because you are not mentally and emotionally composed, it will affect your performance. So what are these examples of this mental state I'm talking about, or emotional state? Let's say some things are happening back home. Maybe you're a grad student already here, and like some things are happening back home, and you've already scheduled your exam. I always encourage to push it forward. Maybe some bad news or something that affects your emotion, or you had a breakup with your boyfriend or your girlfriend. Those things can affect, because not everyone can deal with emotion, like can handle it. So if you know you are the sensitive type and you know you won't be able for some reason to perform 100% in the exam, I always encourage, please just postpone it. Postpone it. It doesn't hurt to postpone the exam, and just make sure you carry everyone along and explain the reason if you're justified. Or perhaps you and your supervisor, you are fighting each other at that point. Maybe you have disagreements on interpretation of data, or for some reason, both of you are not on the same page, and maybe it's not like really mad at you, but things were not going smoothly between both of you. It's a sign that you probably shouldn't do it at that point. And if you know that you can actually fix the relationship between now and the time you're going to take the exam, I encourage to at least push it forward. This is my opinion. I've seen this work for some people in the past, but I don't really know the nature of your school, but I'm also not recommending this, but it's a suggestion. What do you all think?
I think it's a good suggestion. There is no rule without exception, right? And so I think, again, you make a very important point here, Josh, which means to the students, be your own advocate, right? If something comes up, speak up. If you can't take the test, if you're not ready for it, it's for nobody's interest, right? This is not a test that you want to get in and you get a question and you say, I'm sorry, I'm not feeling quite well today. No. It's not that kind of test, right? And let's also make it clear that the point here is not to scare you by making this sound as an end of life kind of test. No. The point here is that this is an intellectually charged test, and your mind, your body, your emotions have to be prepared for that. So if there is anything in the way, even if you have to go all the way to the dean of graduate school to postpone your exam, do not be afraid to make a scene, right? So that's very important.
Thank you, Gabriel, for adding to that. And also to buttress this point, actually, if you postpone the exam, or let's say, for example, you take the exam and you fail it for some reasons, it can be retaken. It's not the end of life, as you said. So, but you don't actually want this stigma of like, I'm taking this exam all over again. And trust me, the process of having to read those materials, having to prepare, it's not something you want to go through twice. You get me? So if you get it once, that's the best, that it's highly recommended. It's not as bad as it is, but the main thing that can draw people down and pull you down from passing this exam at once is when you are not mentally ready. Maybe when things are not really going fine and you cannot really study, or probably you have studied, and because you won't be able to think straight, you probably have some other distractions going in your mind. And in the process, they ask you questions over and over. Some people go until when you don't have answer, because they want to make sure that you don't have the impression that I know it all. So they just keep on going and keep on going until they confirm that
Judge,
you're
somebody
done.
on my committee told me outright that they are going to ask me until I don't have an answer. That's not a bad thing. Intellectually, it's a very amusing situation, actually, if you think about it. And so in a way, get in also knowing that you won't have answers to every single question, right? But if you don't have an answer, at least you make a logical, reasonable assumption in that way, right? And so they are going to push you to the limit until you hit a wall. And the idea is that even if you hit a wall, you try and push back based on your knowledge, but they know that intentionally they are getting you there. So again, it's not that they're your enemies or they want to embarrass you. In a way, they want to show you that there is still more for you to learn.
Thank you. That's the point I'm actually trying to drive at there. They keep on asking you until probably when you don't have an answer. So don't feel that you have to have 100% answers for everything. So at this point, they're just trying to test your intellectual, how much you know about the subject they are asking. And don't feel under the pressure and they ask you a question in the middle of your thesis. If you can't answer one in the beginning, doesn't mean you can't answer one in the end. Don't at that point just fall down emotionally and start crying in their front. In fact, it's a sign that you're not ready for PhD. If ordinary candidacy exam makes you cry, so you don't, that's why I said emotionally, you have to be balanced that day. If they ask you the first question and for some reasons, you don't even know it, it's fine. But one thing I normally do when they ask me such kind of questions, don't just say, I don't know. Just try to, the first approach is try to rephrase the question the person just asked you. Try to repeat it. In the process of repeating the question, maybe you are using it to think, thinking it through that, for example, Gabriel asked me now, what is candidacy exam? And I'm like, oh, thank you for the question. Candidacy exam, you just asked me what candidacy exam is. That process of saying those things, you're trying to process how you would put your answers together. It's welcome, it's allowed. You're not like timed, like, most, I've not seen a candidacy exam that's like timed. I provide this answer, like an oral question, provide an answer in 10 seconds. No, you're not timed. Take your time to think it through. And if you don't know the answer, say something close to it. All right, Nutifafa is gonna chime in here.
I have a question. Is it rude to take long pauses after you are being asked a question, probably because you want to think through it? Or do you have to just go straight up when they ask you a question, you have to be very quick to answer, or you could just take some pauses just to think through it?
All right, I'm gonna answer that first. It depends on what works for you. Someone like me, I don't really like taking too long pauses because I just like to fill in the space. It depends on what works for you. I've seen candidates like being asked question and then they take a pause and then like they put their head down and start thinking. It's all right. I don't think any of those approach is wrong, but personally, I like to at least fill in the space a little, or it depends on how you even feel at the moment. Don't feel under pressure that you have to keep saying something. You don't have to keep saying, you can take a pause and think it through and answer. That's a good comment. Do you agree, Gabriel?
I would say, first of all, you're in a room with professors. So, and I want to say, Josh, I agree with you. It depends, right? But first of all, I want to say, choose a position that you like best. So what that means is, do you want to sit down or do you stand, right? Because it matters. If you take a long pause and you're just sitting down, that may not, and you don't want to take a whole minute. But if you take 5-10 seconds to think, that's understandable. If you're also standing and you just kind of, walk around a little bit and say, what should I say about this question, right? In other words, what Josh and I are getting at here, make it a conversation, right? Also very, very important. You are being tested, but take control of the room in any way you can. So when I took mine, I was standing. And the reason why I did that, because I assume professors were not going to stand. So they're going to remain sitting. And for me, being in a standing position, it really gave me a chance to, look at all of them at the same time. If I needed to move, up and about a little bit as I was thinking and browsing through my slides, it made me more relaxed, if you will. So that's what I would say. There's a question in the Q&A from Moses. Is it acceptable to take more than one question at a time? I don't know what you think about that, Josh, but I would not advise that.
I would not advise that because each question, so I always recommend that, for example, I think as Peter mentioned, in their own case, they are being questioned for like 2 hours. In my own university, I think ours is like 1 hour, 30 minutes. So depending on the time duration, if you want to start acting as a superstar and like every question you're like asking super fast, I don't do that. When the first question comes in, I take my time. I answer it as 100% as possible because the time is already counting at that point. You're trying to, not like you're stalling though, like not like the answer, like there's some yes or no. And like you're not, oh yes, no, yeah, like you're playing them. No, that can be rude. But when the question comes in, you take it 100% and answer it perfectly before jumping to the next one. Don't take two questions at the same time. It's not advisable at all. It's not advisable. And there's no way you can take the two questions and answer them perfectly. And it can also be confusing. So take it as a time. It's like eating cake, a bite at a time. But I don't know how you eat your cake anyway. So a bite at a time.
Another strategy that works here, Josh, in terms of pausing and giving yourself time, you get to a point when they start asking you the really tough questions that are going to push you against the wall. They know they are doing it. You will notice, right? They may even enjoy it. Again, it's an intellectual exercise that's supposed to be fun in a way. And so sometimes if somebody asks you a question, they know it intentionally that it's really difficult and that you may not answer it. You may not have an answer. What you can also say back to them is, that's a really tough one, right? And so it's a very simple response, but it does a lot because it already, you show them that that question is tough. That question is beyond your simple scope of work, right? And that already, when you say that, it changes their expectations of your answer. and at the same time gives you time to think.
Yeah, thank you, Gabriel. Is Notifafa going to say something, or the hands has been forgotten? All right.
I
She's all
think
right.
there
Okay.
were, I think Moses put, Kwame has a question too.
Okay.
Kwame, you can speak now.
Yeah, Gabriel, so this is Bernard. So is it advisable prior to your exams to meet your committee members and ask them of their expectations of you in the period of the exam?
Yeah, good question. It's one of the earlier points we've raised, that it's advisable to meet with your committee one-on-one, but don't go and ask them for the expo, like the exact one for what answer they're going to be asking you. You can go ahead and ask them for, like, what are your expectations of me in this exam? They don't go with the mindset of like, this is the question I'm going to ask you. That no, don't, that's solicitation. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a good point you raised, Kwame.
And don't go there one day before the test, right?
Yes.
Go there a few months, maybe before. I mean, they know you've never taken a candidacy exam first. So you going to them and saying, what should I expect, is a completely reasonable thing to do, right?
So I think Kwame is gonna add to his question.
No, I'm done.
All right, you're
Okay.
good. All right, Notifafa, what about you?
Hey, it's me again. So I have a question about so let's say this scenario. You have a strife with one of the committee members for some reason, but it's too late for you to change him to be on your committee, and you have this candidacy exams, and you realize that he or she is trying to kind of put you down during that whole process. What do? Do you need to address it there and then, or wait for it to be over?
Well, I see Gabriel is smiling. Go ahead.
Go first, Josh. That's a tough one.
It's a very tough one. So this is really context dependent. As a PhD student, you really don't know exactly what the supervisor's expectation is actually, because they might be expecting. So, like, what's the cause of this this feeling that you have that makes you feel she wants to pull you down? And for some reason, I believe that it's really hard for you to have a supervisor that their goal is just to pull you down. It's really rare. But let's say this is real, and the person in your committee, you've already added the person, and then you realize that this person, it's not the best. I think you have to discuss with your supervisor and explain to your supervisor how you feel about this particular person on your committee. I've seen people being removed on committee before, and your supervisor knows the best approach to do this. You're just gonna say, we feel that maybe he won't be the right, he or she won't be the right candidate to be on his committee anymore, perhaps because of the interest or the things, or some plans have changed regarding a project. Your supervisor, trust me, they know how to frame this. They are colleagues to colleagues. They know how to play this. But I wouldn't approach the person directly. Please step down in my committee. Don't do that. Go through your supervisor. I know things happen, but at the same time, I like to understand what would be the cause why someone in your committee will suddenly wants a bad, like won't want you to progress. It's really dark. I don't know.
There are people who are naturally like to be tough. And so it's not unique to you. They just like to grill every student and really push them, and sometimes to a point where it can have a bit of a negative connotation, if you will. And so if that person ends up being on your committee, and you know your committee 3 months ahead of your exam, and you really know that person is going to give you a hard of time, speak to your advisor right away and see if that person can be removed from your committee. If you don't know how to say that, or how to approach your supervisor. That's why Josh and I are here. Again, that's why what the AGC is for, right? Come to us and say, there's this person and I don't know, I really don't know what to do. I don't know how to approach this. What's the most professional, appropriate way to approach this issue? If that person happens to be your PhD advisor and you really feel like, because they are not part of your committee, but believe me, they have a say in whether or not you move forward. If you are in a lab now and you are having a really hard time with your advisor and you don't see a way out, my friend, quit that lab now. If you have that option, find another lab. And the point on everything we're saying here is that you start early. And so if you are a first-year graduate student, start reading now, tonight, or soon. Get on your program website, read about this candidacy exam, learn their rules, when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, who is going to be on your committee, and what the entire process is going to look like. There's a question in the Q&A from Aude Ikuzwe. How early should I start preparing for the candidacy? What is the recommended timeline? I would ask you what year you're in, Aude, but you know, I'll let Josh say what he thinks, but I think you should start now.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
okay, so first year, yeah, start now, as I had just mentioned. Learn about what's ahead for you, what you're going to have to do to pass this exam, right? And then as a PhD student, there is one thing you can never do too much of, and that is reading. You have to read and then read and then read. And so, but you want to read based on the format of your exam. If you're going to do it on your own thesis project, perfect. Then what you're reading is going to help anyways. If it's outside your own project, then you're going to have to read a little bit outside, but still you want to start now.
Yeah, that's exactly how I would answer it. Start now. But as you progress along the PhD program, you intensify your preparation. So, but it's never too early. I don't think so. And what we're discussing currently actually links to this next point that says you ask for tips from colleagues who have the same committee members. This is crucial because, for example, the scenario Nutifafa created that you have someone bad in your committee. Your colleagues know them, especially senior colleagues, people who have been in the system many years before you. Even people who you are in the same lab together with, they have all the information. So don't rely on these resources and ask them. We at AGC probably don't know who your committee member is, but your colleagues at school, the people you take classes together with, they know. And then when you talk and ask questions around, you probably know who has those people on their committee. And for those who have, I don't know who has the last question. Was it Kwame that was asking about when to start preparing? Part of
it's Audi.
Isaac. Audi, yeah, thank you, Audi. So when to start preparing actually is when as early as possible. And this preparation involves who do you want to be in your committee? Yeah. That's part of the preparation. It's not only by studying. Start asking questions around from those people that are the supervisor, like the potential candidates you want to put on your committee. Ask from their students, how are they? Ask for people who they have served in their committee. How is our questions format like? Who is she? Is she the type? Is it the saucy person? Is it the friendly? Just ask questions. You need these resources. That's something I want to emphasize. I don't know how much we have to stay long, but feel free, Gabriel, to stop me at any point. But and I can as well just run through my slide, and if we have other questions to add later.
I mean, we usually run through because it's also being recorded and it's going to be on YouTube. So if somebody has something pressing, they would be free to leave. But I don't want to, if people have time, then I want them to take advantage of you and your slides. And
All
people
right.
are encouraged to keep asking questions as well. I
All
think
right.
they're all great questions, right? So something really quick I want to add to what you just said, Josh, is that, you know, your PhD, just like everything else you do in life, things tend to turn a bit political in a way, and they're always philosophical. And so you need to really develop very good interpersonal skills in this process. You need to know, back to you, Aude, who is it that I'm going to be interacting with, when and how should I prepare for that interaction, right? And back to you, Nutifafa, if you know there is somebody who is really tough on your committee, and you know they are going to sit on your exam 3 months from now or 5 months from now, I would schedule a meeting with them right away. That will let you know what they think of you. You have to go in professionally, of course. You're not gonna go and ask them, hey, what do you think of me, by the way? But that will allow you to know who you are dealing with, and if it's really, really necessary, to try and remove them from your committee. So you are your own advocate once more.
Yeah, thank you. You know, this point actually emphasized what Howdy was asking, like how soon should you start practicing? If for some reasons you have not been preparing at all and you want to take this exam, you need at least, in my own opinion, 1 semester. Like, you can't just say this semester, oh, they're talking about candidacy exam, I need to take it now. So please don't do that, because you're going to stress yourself in the process of trying to read everything, and those information will kind of jam on one another. You might not be able to perform well. So it's good to start preparing. I started this point by prior proper preparation prevents poor performance. If you start preparing early, you won't end up performing poorly. So in the worst case scenario, you should give yourself at least 1 semester. That's how I feel. At least 1 semester to get things together before the exam. All right, so I'm also going to add that it's fair to ask your PI for time to study. In my own situation, I never asked. My PI never gave me, because I was his first candidate and he didn't think maybe I need it. But I was in and out of lab and as well studying. Some of us can handle this, you know, keep on with your project and as well studying for these exams, depending on how much you have to cover in certain times. For example, I won't say I'm going to completely leave my project and just go and be studying. At least I will have something going with my research. Perhaps I may slow down a little bit so I can have more time to study. And it also depends on how soon you are taking this exam. If you feel you're taking this exam in 2 weeks or 3 weeks and you are behind in the study, feel free to talk to your supervisor for time to study, because in the end, it will look bad on them too if you fail your candidacy exam. They all want something that is best in your interest. If you need a little time away from research, let's say you spend 6 hours in a day in the lab and you want it to be as little as 2 hours, communicate with your supervisor. So this point, does anyone want to have question on this based on the time you need to study for this exam?
You know, Josh, one thing I like about the AGC events here is for the students who tune in. It's not like you're reading a book. You're actually hearing from people who've gone through it. So I did the same thing you did, Josh. I was the kind of guy who I just wanted the experiment done, right? So I'm capturing yeast cells. I'm spending hours on the microscopes. I'm running Western blots. I'm running PCRs, and I have the candidacy exam as well. And now looking back, I did pass the candidacy exam, of course, otherwise I wouldn't have a PhD. But I think I should have asked to take time to prepare. And so if you have to slow down the experiments so you can have enough time to read and learn about the people on your committee and you know, the internet nowadays is full of all kinds of information you can you can find. If you just Google how to prepare for the candidacy exam, you'll find, you know, tens, if not hundreds of sources you can browse through. And I just want to say, so you don't make the same mistake. Personally, I wish I had taken more time to prepare. Really, maybe even stop the experiments maybe for a month or so just to prepare. Remember, even if you do it on your own project, they know you've only been in for a few years, right? In some cases, they may let you take it in your fourth or even fifth year. That's also the case, depending on where you are. But if the exam is all in your PhD, they know you don't have a whole lot of data. So there's no need to try to impress them with a million pieces of data when you don't understand what they mean in your field. It's better to show them that you're an intellectually prepared PhD candidate and that you've done some reasonable experiments to test your hypothesis. So take time.
Thank you. It's one of my little regrets of my PhD program. I mean, I eventually did successful, I was successful in the whole process, but these are some of the little things I've looked back that I would have done differently. Like Gabriel, I was like, the day I was doing one of the written exam, like the open book written exam, I was moving from my desk where I was writing to running gel to doing PCR to doing all those things right in the middle of exam, because my research was like my priority at that time, but it should have been a lot nicer. And I realized this fact the year after me when a new grad student came into the lab, and I'm like, I called my supervisor, wait, I haven't seen these grad students like 4 days now, like it's Friday already this week, where is she? And then they say, oh no, she's taking some weeks off for a graduate, for a candidacy exam. I'm like, wait, weeks? How many weeks? He said 2 weeks. I'm like, oh, I didn't take one during my time. We're like, you never asked? So make sure you don't go through what we went through. These are some of the options that you have.
Yeah.
If you are the type that like your research too as well, if you enjoy it, you don't have to take a time off if you want, but it's really stressful. It's not, I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah. I want to say for people who have raised hands before, which we continue to encourage, please chime in, ask questions, make comments. It's great. But if after you speak, lower your hand, so then we know that you want to speak again. Thank you.
All right, so moving on, we have to play the politics well. Gabriel mentioned something a few minutes ago. He said it's political or something. There's politics into it. You'll be wondering, this is academia. Like, how come we're talking about politics? There is politics in everything. And why I said we should be political about this is you have to make sure that you are on good page with everyone in your committee. The politics involves you doing what it's actually not going to be directly proposed to you that, no, this is exact pattern on how you should follow, but the political aspect of it actually covers everything we've been talking about. You going and approaching the students that are in the lab of your potential supervisor or your or some of your committee member, asking them who they are. It's part of the politics. You going ahead and liaising with your PI on how to get rid of somebody in your committee is part of the politics. You trying to discuss with your PI on what date, when to do it, and trying to be on the same good notes with your PI. Even, I used to say something, these are the period where when they are preparing for candidacy exam, you play politics with your PI by just kissing their butts, not necessarily literally, but like dancing to their tune. Like at that point, you don't want to fight with them. Trust me, you don't want to create a scenario. You don't want some miscommunication or disagreement of any kind. These are the politics I'm emphasizing here. And trust me, it works.
Yeah.
Try to be nice with all your committee members. This is the time you see them and you greet them. If you are the type that you don't smile like with all your 32 outside, let them see you. So at least for the time you're preparing for your candidacy exam. All right, maybe you guys want to say something.
I think the point is stay in good terms with your PhD advisor and your committee members all the time, period, right?
Yeah.
And that there is also this assumption that professors or committee members are these perfect, all-knowing, ever knowledgeable people who never make mistakes. No. They are people. They're humans. Science is a human endeavor. There's many mistakes. There's many shortcomings. They will say things they shouldn't have taught to you. They go home, they hit the pillow, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, I should have told that to that student." The problem is they will never tell you that, but you are supposed to recognize that they've said something that maybe was not appropriate, right? So in a way, politics also require a high level of maturity. And as I mentioned earlier, this interpersonal skills is very important here. You're navigating science, but don't forget that you are also navigating people.
Thank you for that contribution. All right, we are coming towards the end. I always say this, that you should not compare yourself with your colleagues. It's not a competition, especially for the candidacy exam. Don't just look around in your lab and realize that all the people that started with you are already taking their candidacy exams. If for some reasons things have not worked out for you, maybe in preparing, or maybe your committee members, you've been unable to select one that that would serve you well, or maybe you are just not ready, and maybe you just collected the materials this semester, and like you see a lot of them taking it this semester, and you're like, oh, this is competition. I have to become a candidate before this person. No, please never compare yourself. Try to set a pace. PhD is a journey that it's a little different from one person to another. At the same time, you don't want to be the last too, but there are challenges of life. For example, I said, let's say there are mental issues or emotional issues or some things you are going through that won't make you prepare for this exam, and you have pushed it forward, and then in the end, you're probably going to be the last person in your lab or among your supervisors to take the candidacy exam. It's all right. Now, because a colleague passed their candidacy exam before you and they are called candidates, does not mean that they are going to graduate and defend their thesis before you, because candidacy exam is just a hurdle in the beginning. So you can have your candidacy as early as you can. I know someone who actually got it like exactly the same semester when, like it's probably a semester before when all of us have started applying to have a candidacy exam. And this guy, I still left him on campus. He was there for like another additional year before he graduated. So it doesn't mean that you are not going to finish your program on time as far as your research is going on well. So never compete, never compare yourself. That's my point there.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. No one is saying anything on that. I also like to mention to minimize your anxiety. It's just like every other exams. It requires you to just prepare ahead and you'll be fine. For those people taking it very soon, like Peter and co, minimize your anxiety. I didn't even say you should eliminate the anxiety. I'm the type that the anxiety actually keeps me on my feet to study. If you are too relaxed and you're too comfortable, it's candidacy exams, I'm just gonna use my residual knowledge. I'm like, I'll play around, and like you're overconfident. Overconfidence might end up killing you in the process. So you need a little of the anxiety to remind you that, oh, I haven't prepared for my exams. I need to study. So I'm not of the opinion that eliminate your anxiety. Don't feel anxious. Someone like me, I feel anxious about everything I care about. Okay. So when you are a little anxious about it, you look forward to it, it will remind you have to prepare for it. But when you don't have any form of anxiety at all, I probably think it might be leaning towards maybe you are overconfident, maybe you feel, you like, I don't know. That's just my opinion about this. I know this is debatable, but you're welcome to chime in at this point. What do you think about anxiety? Can it be eliminated? Or do you think it's best to eliminate it completely for the exam? Or do you need a little of it?
Yeah, can I share my thoughts?
Isaiah, go ahead, please.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so yeah, it's not even about candidates, it's about personal feeling. I feel sometimes when we are doing something and we feel like some sort of anxiety, to me, sometimes it's quite positive, like if you view it that way, because it helps you to try to, okay, so I feel anxious that, okay, maybe they can ask me this and I've not thought of it. This actually primes you to actually be mentally stable and try to think like across all spectrum. But sometimes if there is no anxiety at all, you'll be overconfident, and sometimes some questions that you feel you needed to think critically, you can end up giving loose answers. Because I don't know about the candidacy exam, but I don't think you can just give like just lose answers and go away. Because during my rotation, when I met my PI, any definition that I say, he'll be like, okay, so Isaiah, that's a good definition, but step back, think this way. And I feel that working in the lab that I don't have PR background, I am able to make like a more robust answers to questions, because I feel nervous when I'm going to meet the PI. But labs that I already have like tons of undergraduate background, sometimes I meet them and I make like loose answers. And when they prime me, that's when I get the opportunity to bring out the robust answer. So I feel anxiety is a positive thing on my end.
Thank you, Isaiah. At least Isaiah supports my point. At least one person supports my point. That's how I feel about it. Yeah, when you are not anxious about it, you just feel overconfident, and you might end up not preparing well. Anxiety keeps me prepared for certain things. It works for some people, while for some people it doesn't. When they have any form of anxiety, it ruins their performance. So, but whatever works for you, but you don't try not to be overconfident. That's the point here.
Yeah. This is not a test you can win. If your written report is due at 5 p.m. today, you don't want to still be writing at 4 p.m. or at noon, right? You're gonna get things done days before. So you have time to relax and prepare for the oral presentation or review your written material. You can't wing this, right? And I also would agree, by the way, with Josh and Isaiah, that a little bit of nervousness can be useful in this situation.
Yes, I would like to stop the conversation here and the presentation, and I would like to entertain more general questions that you may have at this point.
Okay, so let me see if I can change the view, Josh, and you're welcome to stop your slideshow if you are done.
Okay.
Let me see what I can do, but thank you so much, Josh. That was wonderful.
It's my pleasure.
I also want to thank everyone who participated. I want to see if the attendees now should also be able to see the whole gallery, so you should be able to see everybody. So again, really, Josh has touched and hinted on all important things about this exam. We can't know the formats and the rules that each and every one of you is going to have to follow to pass this exam. But my hope is that you have all grasped the important and common aspects of this test. And that by participating in this webinar, hopefully you feel more knowledgeable and more prepared, maybe less anxious about this candidacy exam. It's not a myth, as it may sound sometimes. It's not a way to pull you down. If it feels like that's the case, then you're probably in the wrong place and you need to reassess. I want you to remember all the time that AGC is here for you. So Josh is your senior advisor. You can always reach out to me. And even if you're not in the AGC, but you participated in this webinar, you're welcome to reach out. We will be happy to help. And you can always go back to this webinar and watch it, right? So if I would take anything home from what Josh presented today and the questions and the comments that have been made, is that you need to prepare early, really as early as you can. You can never be too early for this test. You need to understand the philosophy, the politics, the rules of both the exam and the people that will be involved in your testing for your PhD candidacy. And you need to be familiar with these rules and tests ahead of time, right? If you have to take time and slow down in the lab to prepare, please allow yourself to do so, because these tests can be quite charged. There's a lot of material that you will eventually have to review to get ready for the test, right? And as I mentioned earlier, also, I do believe that it's important that no matter what the situation, if you are in that oral presentation exam, take control of the room. If you've never done it, you can, there's a lot of videos on YouTube. There's a lot of resources on internet, how you take control of a room in a presentation. There is a lot of tips that people use, maintain that eye contact. Do not feel like you're necessarily, actually keep in mind that even at that stage, you already know more about your project. You already know more than any of your committee members, because you've read way more papers on your topic than either one of them has, right? Remember that the questions are meant to challenge you intellectually, but not to crush you. They will ask you until you can't answer, but that's to remind you again that you still have a lot to learn. And that's what we're doing in our PhD. We are learning, right? If we know everything, we don't need a PhD, right? So it's good to be reminded in that way. So I guess in my closing remarks, I also once again want to thank Josh for joining us today and giving a wonderful and engaging presentation. I also want to mention once more that this webinar was part of the AFISNet graduate community, or AGC. Please be on the lookout for future presentations. We are going to do more webinars that are open to the public now, especially those that are covering things of general nature, such as the candidacy exam. We are going to discuss many more things like, PI-student relationships. I think we need to revisit that one. We are also going to talk about immigration. I think most of you are international students in the United States, and we also want to share that with you, because you need to stay legally in the country for as long as you wish to do your science. And so we're also going to touch on that. We're also going to touch on things that are pertaining to your career now and later in the future. When you get an advertisement for these events, I really ask that you share it with as many people as possible who you think might benefit from it. This is an effort primarily targeted towards African graduate students, whether they're in Africa or not. But as I said, we're also opening it to many other graduate students who may not be from Africa, with the goal that perhaps what we say here can be useful to everyone else, but also anyone else can also chime in and say and share things that can be helpful to all of us. So again, be on the lookout for our future events. And if you see an ad, please do share around. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to send out a short survey for everyone who attended or had registered, and therefore is going to receive the link for this recorded webinar. I ask that you please fill out that survey. My hope and plan is that these events continue to happen in the future, and we need to know what we are doing right and what we may need to improve on, so this event can be useful to you in your future, or maybe your younger sister or brother who is gonna come or start a master's or a PhD program next year. Thank you so much again for joining us today, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.